If we look at the delivery of services, we go into that in a bit more detail. So one of the things I find quite interesting in this area is the opportunity to engage services on a rate-based model versus a value-based model.
Yeah.
And again, it ties into the difficulty in validating and proving like value-based decisions, which is ultimately where everyone says they're trying to get to and where it makes sense for people to try and go. But it needs to be measured and defined effectively. But it ties into risk and things like that as well. How do you see it in terms of, and how does the business see it currently when you address that from a traditional rate-based, it's quite simple, I know that this type of person this rate, versus that outcome-based?
Do you know what? I struggle with this one. I really struggle with this one. I'll come on to that bit in a bit. But WSP as an organisation, I think we have internal kind of conflicts about this because we're a professional services organisation as well, right? So you speak to some very senior people, and because we're a rate-based organisation at the moment, and I think some senior people will say, actually, do you know what? We want to start moving into a place of where we are providing proposals from a value-based perspective. Because we've been doing this a long time, We can engineer a building, we can design a tunnel, we can tell you where a railway should go, etc. And there is an inherent value to that expertise. We should be pricing thus. Some say no, day rates and all that kind of good jazz. On the flip side, in the procurement standpoint, we are, as you said, we're increasingly beginning to see proposals being come through which are value-based proposals. And the reason I struggle with them is innately and inherently, as a procurement person, I want to get that number, and it's usually that one number, and I want it exploded.
Yeah, you'll break it down.
I really want to see what's in it. And the more I think about it, I don't think that's an unfair question. I genuinely don't think that's an unfair question. If you're going to price your value and your expertise, fine. But tell me what that's worth. So I can measure that against what another organisation think that their value and experience is worth. The same way that I get a bill of materials, right, and I get a cost at the bottom. Fine. Works for a widget. But why can't I do that for professional services? How many partner days am I getting? How many director days am I getting? How many junior manager days am I getting? Cool, fine. That's a really basic number. But you've also put something else in there. You've put a cost of your value in there. And I want to know that. I'm not going to let my team come back to me and say, here's a proposal, it's £400,000, it's value-based, so I didn't get a breakdown of it. If I don't ask the question, when we go for sign-off for £400,000, do you think the C-suite are really just going to sign that off without asking any questions? They're not. So we better get used to seeing these value-based propositions. But just because it's got value-based written all over it doesn't mean that you can't start to interrogate it and investigate it. And I think we're on this kind of cusp now of, maybe kind of going into the kind of marketing procurement world where everything is value-based and, you can't really ask me that because it's all about the brand, it's all about getting more sales. Listen, if we start seeing that in the more kind of sub-consultants and subcontracting world,
technical stuff,
we're going to push back.
I think it's such an interesting area of discussion because value-based pricing or outcome-based pricing. So if you look at it as an outcome rather than necessarily as a value, or the two being kind of combined, then there are certain things. It depends how your contracts are structured. Yeah. So if you've got a rate-based and a time-based contract, it depends how much that can just run on. Because it's like when companies look at, if they're going to do an IT project, I could hire a load of Java developers, X amount per day, or I could get this, outsource it to this company who are going to deliver the project for me. If I hire these developers, it's kind of like, I feel comfortable knowing the rates I'm paying. But how long is it going to take? Is the project going to go wrong? Where does the risk sit? versus if it's on an outcome basis, that company are going to deliver it. And if they run over their own budget, that's their problem.
It is, yeah.
So there's that element to it as well. But I think, where a company does have that intrinsic value and that expertise, in the same way that WSP have that intrinsic value and expertise, as you say, all that inherent experience of doing all these projects, that is definitely worth something. So what's the old story about the engineer, the boat engineer, when the man who owns the big giant container ship says, there's something wrong with my boat, I need you to come. He tries everybody, no one can fix it, and this guy comes along, spends some time looking at it, and then just taps the engine with a hammer, and it works, and it gives him the bill for £10,000. Oh, can you charge me that? He says, well, I'll break it down for you. It's £1 for tapping it with a hammer and 9,999 for knowing where to tap. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, oldest story in the world, but there is that. How do people price that out? And that's where some organisations will become more proud to say, we know we can deliver this. We're comfortable we can deliver for the budget we've set forward, and we know we're going to do a great job because our brand, our reputation, our previous work with you, and all these sort of things. But like you say, when it comes into that, there's this. It's not a given that people are just going to accept that.
No.
But I think organisations should be able to break it down. It's just that they're probably not used to doing that.
Honestly, potentially, I don't see any different from me kind of scoring it and saying, what's day rate for X, day rate for Y, day rate for Z, and then you can say, well, actually, these guys, company A, B, C in my RFP or whatever, are actually putting a value on their expertise, and it's 10,000 versus 12,000 versus 15,000, and you compare and contrast. I know you take it in the round, I get that, but I think you got to be able to kind of say, well, what is it? What is that intrinsic number that you're putting onto that value? Because I want to know.